Okay.
All right. Wonderful. Yay, we're live.
Hello everyone, my name is Brian Collins and I'm joined by Eamonn O'Brien, founder of the Reluctant Speakers Club. And today we're going to talk about communications tips for business people and for business leaders and managers who are perhaps communicating to an audience who's got a dwindling attention span. So if you have questions during the Facebook Live session, just if you want to type them into the chat box and Eamonn will answer them. And
Yep, do my best.
what I would also say is that if you join the session, you're in the middle of the session, if you want to share the video, please do. So Eamonn, could you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Eamonn O'Brien and I'm the founder of the Reluctant Speakers Club, where I work with business leaders to basically speak memorably. So whether it's from the podium or indeed when you're looking at a camera like this, it's become increasingly more important for better audience engagement. So that's what I do.
And how long have you been involved in public speaking and coaching business people about communication?
I've been involved in public speaking now since the early 90s.
Yeah.
In fact, the truth is I got into public speaking by pure and blind chance. I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
What actually happened was, years ago, I had a boss. I was working with a company called MCI in America, and he said to me one day, "Eamonn, I've got great news for you." I said, "Great, what is it?" He said, "I've got you a spot at an all-hands meeting." So I said, "Well, what's that?" So he said, "Well, I was expecting maybe 20 people to show up at this thing." He said, "There'll be about 700 people there. And all of the senior managers, all of the vice presidents, all of the senior execs and the president. And one more thing, Eamonn, you're speaking before the CEO.
Yeah.
Don't let the side down."
Yeah.
So I practiced so hard, but really the big thing I did on that day, and it was purely because I knew that it was the right thing to do, was to tell a lot of stories. And in fact, I got so engaged on the day, I completely forgot, honestly, that the CEO was following me.
Yeah.
And so I told all sorts of stories about a woman from Auschwitz and how her daughter thought that she was going to die on an operating table and why, having a call home was so important. And the next thing is the CEO follows me, and she was furious because she had lots of facts and details. And she said, "What do I do now? How do I follow Eamonn O'Brien's younger brother?" Anyway, she did get a little upset with me, but the upshot was I got invited from one talk to give lots more talks, and within a matter of time I became a professional speaker.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I've been involved in marketing for umpty-dumpty years, but in the last 5 years I set up a company called the Reluctant Speakers Club, which is all about helping people to get past the fear of speaking in front of an audience and really to figure out what it takes to be more engaging, more interesting, more inspiring, all with a view to influencing your audience.
Yeah. And could you tell me a little bit about the types of people you work with?
Yes, so it tends to fall into 3 categories. So it tends to be business owners, it tends to be professionals. I work with a lot of people in the financial space, legal, engineering, anybody who's in the technical space who also needs to make things sound a little more interesting and engaging, and then also people who are in the executive space who now need to be more front and central and to get people excited about ideas. So those are the 3 groups.
And could you talk to me a little bit about the challenges of the first group? And while you do, I'm going to just check if we have a question for you.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge for any of those groups actually is the single biggest issue facing business in general in terms of winning new business, which is that information overload has now reached a level that is really out of control. So much so that, if you listen to this actually, Brian.
Yeah.
You hear that? That was 3 sites just been born. Second by second. So there's basically 1 billion sites out there now competing for attention for the people that you want to get excited about most anything. And that's a real challenge for people because with that level of information overload, audiences are paying less and less attention. In fact, there was a fascinating study that was done originally by a US State Department. These lads don't get out much, and was followed up by, I think Microsoft did a similar study. And what they found is that the average attention span of an adult is now less than that of a goldfish.
Yeah, because of the distraction of online.
Yeah, I mean, like, apparently a goldfish can pay attention to what I don't know for 9 seconds, but we're down to 8 and falling. But to be honest with you, when you're online, you don't even get 8 seconds, because you're doing something right now, and I promise you, 2 minutes is really good.
Yeah.
2 seconds, I'm sorry, 2 seconds, 2 minutes would be a pipe dream.
So in case you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm actually looking to see if there are any questions for Eamonn on Facebook Live. One of the great ways you can use Facebook Live, of course, is to talk directly maybe to your customers about some of the issues they might be having, or to help them, like Eamonn's just talked about. And you can actually ask questions on Facebook Live if you just type it into the comments section, and then myself and Eamonn will hopefully be able to answer.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I was interested in is, like, it sounds to me like you also coach people maybe who have some experience with public speaking, but maybe want to take it to the next level.
Yeah, it tends to be kind of like 2/3, 1/3. So you've got 2/3 of folks who would love to be able to speak in front of others, but they really struggle because they're worried about all the things that could go wrong. So there's fear and trepidation. Here's a really odd thing. You know, we're supposed to have the gift of the gab in this country. Yeah, but 8 out of 10 people in business have such a fear of speaking in public or speaking to a camera like this that they never do. So that's a major issue. So getting past that is the first part. And then the second bit is, once you've got in front of an audience, how do you get people really excited about what you say? And the truth is that most times when people hear a speaker, they actually remember remarkably little about it. And that's a real problem. So obviously, if you've gone to the trouble, you've got over the fear and trepidation, you stand up in front of people, but you want them to remember what you said, and they don't. How upsetting is that?
Well, I suppose it depends on the audience. I would imagine, though, it probably would put you a little bit off doing more speaking. In the future.
So we get into lots of things that you can do that can help you to get past that. But perhaps one of the first things that might kind of help people to think a little bit more about whether public speaking is right for you and whether it's something you ought to consider is this. So I talked earlier on about how attention spans are dwindling, and there's something else that's going on, which is this little thing here. This is one of the biggest issues for every company of every ilk trying to develop presence. Because nowadays, most people, when they're going online, they're either using this or they're using a pad of some device of some sort in order to get whatever information they want. And the problem is that when people go online, what's the first thing they'll do? They'll Google things, right? And with the billion websites out there, there's a lot of noise out there. And even if you're producing awesome content, there's still about 2.5 million blog posts, would you believe, going out every single day, which is basically the same number of books that are produced on an annual basis in the world, right? And that's all clamoring for attention. But now that people are using this, they're not reading anymore. So if you get 15 seconds worth of attention from something that you put out on a blog post, you're actually doing quite well today.
But are they not reading on their phone?
They're not reading on their phone. No, what they're doing is they are watching. So video has become absolutely immense. In fact, it's now the vast majority of what people consume online. And within the next 5 years, actually, about 80% of everything that people will consume will either be video or audio. So, so it's very important as we think about getting attention from people that we get comfortable with the notion that we're going to have to change the way that we connect with people to get engagement from them at all. So today online, if it's not visual, if it's not something I can watch, if it's not something that I can listen, if it's not something that's easy for me to share, you're probably not going to get a great deal of attention at all.
And do you find that like as clients that you would work with in a business, if they're nervous about public speaking, would they be nervous about video as well? Or
worse.
Worse?
Worse. Because when you're looking at a camera like this, there's nobody looking back at you. At least if you've got an audience in front of you, you can see if they're nodding and they're smiling and what have you, whether they enjoyed what you have to say. So, so it's really markedly different. And also the other thing that happens is when you're in front of a camera, you also have to do something where you're having to up your energy level because the sound is different and the audience, if you like, ambience and what have you there helps to kind of energize you a little bit more. So particularly if you have a lot that you have to say, it can come over as being a little bit robotic, a little bit stilted, like it's not a real conversation.
So if I wanted to create my first video for my business, I don't have a big budget, so I'm not going to be hiring.
Which is why one of these is great.
Yeah, so you take out your iPhone,
yeah.
put it on. We're actually recording this on a stand that costs I think $20. So
Yeah.
you don't need. My point is you don't need expensive equipment.
Yeah.
But for the actual content of the video, should I just talk about a topic that's relevant to my potential audience or customers?
Absolutely, and maybe we kind of hit two birds with a one stone, because if you want to up engagement with your audience, the first thing is that you need to be sharing something that they care about. And the fastest way to up engagement with an audience is that you pick topics that you know give them a headache.
Yeah.
Something where if you could give them some advice, some tips, some input on this, it would really help them. So they have to feel like instantly, as soon as you start a video, as soon as you start a blog post, as soon as you start a talk, within a matter of seconds, ooh, this is good.
Yeah.
I might learn something here. This could be helpful. And then they're much more likely to lean in and want to hear more. So choosing your topic is really important. And if there was one piece of advice I would give above all else about any form of content, again, whether you're in front of an audience or you're looking to camera, is don't go general with your topic. Don't try to hit too many birds with the one stone. You're much, much better to pick something that's as specific as you can. So, for example, we're talking today about things that you can do perhaps as a business owner, or perhaps as somebody who's in charge of the financial decisions of a business, where you have specific things that you might care about a great deal more. So, for example, I know that's your Sage blog is really about helping people to get awesome business advice. So I did a little bit of homework before I arrived, just for the heck of it. And so I said, I wonder now what would happen if I looked under just business advice in Google.
Yeah.
How many possible options would I have for business advice?
I would imagine quite a lot. Yeah.
Hazard a guess? And incidentally, online, you're free to guess as well. How many possible options do you think I got business advice?
That's several 100,000, I would say. Yeah.
770 million.
Well, that's a bit off.
Interestingly, though, that's a trick question, because people, when they're looking for something online, they rarely go beyond the first page.
Yeah.
And Sage is on the first page.
Yeah.
So the reason that's true is because you keep producing interesting content and you are consistent about the content that you're producing. So obviously people are voting with their attention spans, with their feet, with their whatever, in order to look at your content. But when you as a business owner are looking to pump up your visibility, the single most important thing you've got to do is to get in front of an audience where they're looking.
Yeah.
And incidentally, that's why the whole speaking side of things is so important.
Yeah.
Because if I'm looking online for something and I'm doing a search and I won't go beyond page 1, and 9 out of 10 cats won't look beyond page 1, if I don't find something, I'm gone in a matter of seconds. If, on the other hand, you're in front of an audience, particularly those that you especially want to influence, so you need to pick your audience, how cool is it that you can have 20, 30, 40 minutes of undivided attention from these folks?
Yeah.
And the vast majority of people who own their own businesses, what's their number one source of finding extra information outside of the internet?
Maybe a colleague or a friend?
Colleagues, peers, but events.
Okay.
Going to seminars, going to conferences, going to meetings, meeting their buddies. Because you're absolutely right, we go to basically where our pals are, where our peers are. And so if you can get in front of an audience, the right audience, that's the first thing. Yeah. And the second thing, though, is the more specific you are about what you can promise that you can help people with, the more likely it is the audience will get excited about that. So if I said, rather than, actually, I'm going to give you a source of business advice here.
Yeah.
If I said, I'm going to give you a source of business advice on, so I know writing is your thing.
Yeah.
So on writing content that will knock your audience's socks off. Now that's much more specific, because if I have a problem with writing and I know that I'm rubbish at it, and maybe my grammar isn't great, and maybe my sentences are way too long, and if somebody should take a big old red pen and put a big cross through it, that's really valuable to me. So the more specific you are, that tends to be really, really helpful.
So if I picked a specific topic and I decided I'm going to create a video about it, or perhaps write the blog post, how do I grab someone's attention then quickly?
Yeah. So the first thing is don't hide your light under a bushel. Tell people within a matter of seconds what you're going to talk about. So never mind all the platitudes about, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so pleased to be here and I'm delighted that blah blah. Everybody knows that you're pleased to be there and that you're delighted that you're invited. Cut to the chase. So like, for example, today we're talking about a dwindling attention span, single biggest issue for anybody trying to create visibility in their business. And talking about maybe 2 or 3 things that you could do that could really help people to do a better job. So tell people up front about what you want them to get excited about, and then from that point on, then the key thing is that you don't turn up though without having really prepared yourself. Because I want to get into now one of the biggest sins that people make when speaking. First of all, with so much information out there, and with so many folks that we might have in your audience from different elements, sometimes we take shortcuts where we assume that we know what's good for the audience and we don't really ask them. And that's a tragic error. You should always, always, always find out, if nothing else, actually there's many things you should learn, but there's 2 things more than anything else that you need to understand about your audience. Firstly, do they actually have the problems that you're promising to solve? Because if they don't, you can be wonderful, and they'll give you polite applause incidentally because they're delighted that you spoke and they didn't have to. But is anything going to happen? No, of course it isn't, because I can't do anything with the information. So the first thing is always find out if you're actually hitting hot buttons. And then the second thing is that if there's one thing that gets an audience, you asked me what gets an audience excited. One thing that gets an audience more excited than anything else is focusing on how things could be. Back in the 90s, and I mentioned how I got into public speaking, but I didn't say what I did as a job. I used to be involved in ethnic marketing in America, and I used to make commercials. So I made, I don't know, maybe 300 plus commercials in lots of different languages. Everything from Russian to Polish, Arabic, Farsi, French, Italian, and so forth. But I learned a really, really important lesson when I did my very first in-language commercial, which was for a Russian-speaking audience. And I had a huge ad agency that was going to help us with this, the Mad Men of Madison Avenue. And so we were going to be really earthy. We were going to capture the essence of the Russian-speaking population in America. Up we went to a place called Little Odessa in Queens, and we were going to capture authentic. So we weren't quite Quentin Tarantino, but we were kind of thinking that we were absolutely going to knock this out of the park. Created the commercial with music that sounded like it came out of Dr. Zhivago out of it, and put it out into the mass market, and the mass market in America loved it. Said, look how international these people are, this is a great story, yada yada yada. Our Russian-speaking audience hated it. It bombed. They wrote us nasty notes because no one from that audience wanted to be portrayed as they actually were. What they wanted was to be seen as the people they wanted to become. And so that was one of the most important things that I ever learned, and really applies to every form of communication. If you pay attention to how things could be, that is always more interesting for your audience. In fact, it's the reason that you buy most anything. You know, you buy a new shirt. Oh, listen, I have to buy a new shirt. Why? Because the old ones, they're not. That's not me anymore. You know that. Why'd you buy that thing for?
Yeah.
Why'd you pay so much money for that new car? Oh, but look at the stripe around the corner there. And the alloy wheels, oh man, I'm made. But the point is that focusing on outcomes is always something that causes people to be more interested.
Yeah.
As opposed to wallowing in detail. And actually, that's something that it might be especially interesting for people who are in the financial space, because if there's one issue more than anything else that gets in the way of great speaking communication, it's when we try to do too much.
Yeah.
So, if we're chatting here for 15 minutes, we can put a lot into that, but the truth is that the more we simplify things for our audience, the more likely they are to get excited about it and to remember it and to tell other people after the fact.
So we're just going to take a pause for one moment. We'll be right back with more questions for Eamonn.
Good, and I'll have a sip of coffee while you all think about it.
So if you've just joined us, my name is Brian Collins from the Sage Content Team, and I'm talking to Eamonn O'Brien, founder of the Reluctant Speakers Club. And if you have questions, I would say put your questions in the chat box and Eamonn will answer them.
Yep.
And if you're watching this video after the Facebook Live broadcast is over, please do share the video with anybody you think might find it helpful. Or alternatively, Eamonn, where can people reach you online?
Yeah, if you want to reach me, go to the reluctantspeakersclub.com. And in particular, check out the blog. You will find it is absolutely wall-to-wall full of tips that will help you to speak memorably. So everything from things that will help you on the stage, to choosing the topics that you might like to speak about, to speaking on camera, to actually extending your message. So, the truth is that while you might speak to camera or you might speak on stage, that's only one part of the conversation, that you need to continue that conversation elsewhere. So extending, if you like, that conversation on social media or through your email marketing, or if you like, the total outreach that you have with your audience.
So we talked a little bit about video. I'm curious, where do you stand on short video versus longer video for communications? It seems to me that short video will be better.
Short video, well, that's a really interesting question, and I would have said, when you asked me that question, that short tends to be better, as long as people are engaged. So I find, for example, when I'm doing video interviews, and I do expert interviews every other week or every week, that 10 to 15 minutes tends to be a sweet spot, because it's an interesting conversation and it's a bite-sized chunk. I think when you do things that are 30 plus minutes, that's much harder to get people to sit down and to watch that. But if you're creating webinars on really interesting topics, then you can go out for a little bit longer. So maybe it could be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It could be even an hour. But anything beyond that, people are really pre-programmed to disengage. So shorter tends to be better. But fascinating factoid. I was watching a brand new webinar from a pal of mine over in Canada. His name is Steve Dotto, who runs a brand called Dotto Tech, I think it's called. But anyway, fascinating fellow. And he does a lot of work on video. And he was talking about both the mad increase in the amount of video that we're watching today, which is now 5 billion views a day on YouTube. And according to Facebook, there's 8 billion, but that's of views on Facebook a day. Incidentally, that's a bit of a cheat, because most of those are with the sound off. But anyway, notwithstanding that. But he said that the average person, when watching video on YouTube, is watching 40 minutes of it in a go. But I'm guessing that that's many different videos.
Certainly from one to the next.
Certainly from one to the next. So the point I'm making is that when you're thinking about video, if you particularly you create a video channel, it's a good idea to create playlists, because if the topic is of interest to somebody, then they'll watch one video, then they'll watch the next video, and they'll watch the next video.
Yeah.
So you can really increase your view time. And incidentally, YouTube as a search engine are giving extra credit to people who have longer viewing times.
Yeah.
So if you can get your viewing times to an average of in excess north of 2 minutes,
Yeah.
then YouTube is going to love you and put more traffic your way.
Yeah.
And I can tell you honestly, that's how a lot of the traffic comes to me. But you do still have to do lots of search engine optimization and other things. You have to tell people why they should get excited.
So what's your, that's I agree with a lot of what you said. What's your primary channel then for grabbing people's engagement? Is it YouTube or grabbing people's attention?
Number one channel is public speaking.
Yeah.
And the reason that that is the case is that, if I can put it this way, a pal of mine in America, a fellow called Mark Schaefer, has written a marvelous book about engaging people at a time of what he calls content shock.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read it, can I encourage you to run out and get yourself a copy, because it is a super read. But what he says is that regardless of how much noise you put out there and how many followers you have on Twitter, how many likes you have on Facebook, how many people are subscribing to this, that and the other thing for you, which is wonderful, that if people don't actually know you, if they haven't met you personally, your impact and your ability to get people to do things is materially less. He did a fascinating thing a number of years ago where he thought he was going to try and raise a little bit of money for children in need, some need. And so in 6 days or 7 days, he managed to raise $6,000 or $7,000, which was absolutely brilliant. And he got lots of pals, because he's very well connected on social media, to give him lots and lots of shout outs. So you're talking about people of hundreds and 200 and 500,000 followers. So he reckoned he had 3, 5, 10 million impressions. So, you know, stuff that you couldn't buy really in terms of outreach. 80 people, 90 people, I can't, something like that, 80, 90 people gave him money.
Yeah.
And when he looked back to see how many people came to him who were not in his network, one.
Yeah.
So in other words, most people had to know him, and when he looked at where he got the most money from, it was 80% of it came from people where he had actually spent time one-on-one, not just a social engagement or social connection, because we have a lot of those online. So getting in front of people is very important, because what it does is it lets people get a better sense of you, to figure out, you know, that person has something interesting to say. I trust that person. And that trust bit is really, really important. So can't overemphasize this, that particularly in an era of noise, working on a deeper relationship with your audience is really, really important. So you can't just look at what you do online as a standalone. You have to also find ways to get in front of people. Now video, you asked me the question, and it took me a while to come back to that. Video is a great way of creating a more intimate relationship with your audience.
Okay.
Because you can see the person, you can hear the inflection in their voice, you can hear that person actually give a hoot about me, are they sharing something interesting? So you get a terrific sense of somebody from video. But if you can supplement that with the personal, that's really important. And one other thing, though, that is especially valuable, and this is something that people really are not using to the extent they could, is don't just think about video. Think about whether podcasting might be right for you.
Okay.
Because podcasting is immense. It's fascinating in the States and elsewhere, and Europe is following the States in this. The speed at which people are downloading podcasts has grown like Mach speed. Yeah. It's unbelievable. To the extent that 1 in 3 people in America now are listeners to podcasts. But 1 in 5, which is basically getting on for 80+ million people, it's a little bit more than that, I think, are regularly listening, which means these folks are listening to 6+ podcasts every week.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having that amount of ear time from anybody, where they're listening to you for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes?
Yeah.
It's immense.
Have you tried podcasting yourself?
Podcasting is a huge thing for me, yeah. In fact, I experimented with it about 2.5 years ago, and because I saw that people were changing what they were consuming and how they're consuming content, because I was a huge blogger and still I do a lot of blogging. So now I do blogs, podcasts and video, and within a matter of 3 months, because I gave it a 90-day test, I saw that my dwell time for content that people were consuming went up. But the other thing that was interesting was the conversion rate for people who actually came to your website also went up.
Yeah.
The value they placed in what you had to say went up, which meant that you could actually charge more for what you do. Woohoo!
Yeah. So, and you're still podcasting today?
So still podcasting today, and it was very helpful also that within, 5-6 months, that my podcast got into the top 100 small business podcasts in America.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the bar...
Is it a tough category?
Well, it turns out it's not a tough category.
Okay. I would have thought there's a lot. Listening to podcasts myself, there's a lot of podcasts in that.
Well, there are lots and lots of podcasts, but if, for example, you said, okay, so your thing is writing.
Yeah.
How many podcasts are there on better business writing?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to this question, incidentally.
Yeah.
But I'll bet that you would not find more than 10 at most people in your particular space. You could dominate the universe, Brian.
So if a business person is interested in podcasting, maybe they should look at what their business is providing and consider.
So if your business was pick any business that somebody might be in. Specific business.
Let's say I had a printing business. So
a printing business, right? So you're talking about better flyers.
Yeah.
And connecting that to what you do maybe online.
Yeah.
The number of people in Ireland or in Britain, where this is going live, that have a podcast about how you can do a better job if only you worked on your design, I'll bet it's really, really small.
So you could essentially grab your potential customers' attention in a way that your competitors aren't doing.
And incidentally, do it on video as well as doing audio, because YouTube will love you for it.
Yeah.
And the upshot is that not only will people more likely find you on page 1, the other thing is they'll see a picture of you.
Yeah.
And guess what? When people see a video or they see a picture, they are 50 times more likely to look at your content.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's a great way of grabbing attention. So on that note, we're going to wrap up today's Facebook Live session with Eamonn O'Brien from the Reluctant Speakers Club. Could you give your website again for people?
Yeah, so if you go to the reluctantspeakersclub.com, and also if you'd like to get a free downloadable with 3 things that you can do that will instantly improve your speaking, just drop me a line at O'Brien, EOBRIEN, at the RSC, for the THE, Reluctant Speakers Club, rsc.ie, and I'll be delighted to send it to you.
Thank you.